This is my 1984 Chevrolet Silverado, and today I'll be repairing the rust on this cab corner. First thing I want to do is assess the damage. You can see that it's already pretty badly bubbled up here and there. Also looks like somebody's made a repair here already, probably with fiberglass. Did you notice that? It was snowing filler and bondo. Well, let's see here. This is like where that fiberglass patch is. There's a big old hole here. I started sanding up here to find good metal. And it looks like, from the shape of this, that the metal is still good. Not just rusty, but also not distorted or bent or pushed in, roughly up until about here. On the other side, it's pretty much the same thing. We have like rust spots all around here. There's a lot of filler and bondo down here. So I reckon we'll start about there and cut that out. Now a patch panel here is much, much bigger, and it would cover a much bigger repair if necessary. But all that is good metal, and it's also not distorted. So we'll keep it. On this side, the rocker panel and the cab corner meet. And the rocker panel is actually a two-part. It's an outside and an inside rocker panel, and they're spot welded down here. This piece is spot welded up here, and where I ground off the paint, right here, 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 and here, you can see the spot welds from the factory. I'll have to drill those out. You can also see more here, here, and here. But lucky for us, this cab corner sits on top of the rocker panel here. So the new part will sit right in here, and I will have to make it fit. I will have to drill out some of these spot welds here. And I'm using a special tool for that. And the reason I'm drilling them out is because I don't want to damage the metal that's behind this, that this panel is welded to. That way I have something to weld the new panel to. For this I'm using a tool like this. This is a spot weld drill. They make different kinds. This one is spring loaded. It is set in the center of the spot weld. You'll have to push it in until the teeth touch the metal and start grinding out around the spot weld. My impact drill has multiple settings, and I'm using the very first setting that's basically there to just set a screw and not use the impact drive to drive it any further. I like using this for drilling out spot welds because it won't break the teeth on my tool. Once it starts catching, the drill just stops. So I'll start by finding the center of the spot weld, giving it a good whack to mark it. Then we set the tip right on the center where we drilled, and you can see this is spring loaded. So I start the drill slowly and slowly start pushing in. You see that? There's rust coming out. That means I'm actually all the way through the top layer of this metal. There was some moisture trapped behind this, and this panel is probably also rusted on the back. But that's usually a good indicator that you're done drilling. See that? The teeth caught and the drill stopped for me. The reason that's happening is I'm drilling at an angle here. It's not very advantageous, but gotta get it done. That should do this one too. It'll take about a minute each on each spot weld if you take your time. There are faster methods to this. You could just take a stepper drill and run it right in here. If you are in a hurry and you don't really care about the metal that's behind it, that's absolutely the way to go. It's the fastest thing you can do, and you get the spot weld every single time. I want to retain the metal that's behind here so I get something to weld to. That's why I use a spot drill. Well, let's see if it came loose at all. Yep, that's all loose. See that? Ooh, dear. There's a lot of crap breaking out of here. Okay. Yep. Somebody made a fiberglass repair right there. This is the last spot weld, hopefully. Now let's see if our piece is coming off willingly. See over here. So that one's off, that one's off, that one's off. And that one wants to be off, still a little in there. Okay. Yeah, it's off. Let's see. See? I can get my screwdriver behind there. Now it's time to cut this piece out. I'll be using an angle grinder for this. And what's important, make sure that you remove paint and Bondo and whatever is there and get down to metal before you use the angle grinder to cut this. If you cut first and then you're trying to get the paint off with a flap disc, say, you'll quickly wear down the metal where it's too thin to weld. And thin metal warps really easily and it's not as strong. I'll be using a piece of metal that I had here as a straight edge to make my marks. Well, there we go. Oh, come on. All right. Okay. Now we can see our damage a little better. So this is commonly what you'd expect to find. A little bit of rust down here. There's sometimes dirt and debris that falls down here, sometimes all the time. And it collects here together with moisture, rainwater, whatever have you, and this slowly starts rotting out. For 40 years, still not too bad. I see worse. Now I'll use a wire wheel to clean the damage up. This corner is cleaned up, and I cut our spare piece of sheet metal in half, just so it would barely cover our repair spot. We made a mark in the back, and this is where it's going to sit. Looks like it'll fit. The metal underneath our cap corner is also a little bit rusty. There's damage here, long hole, and some here. I cleaned the cap corner up more, and I cut out all the rust. That left me with two defined, but not exactly small holes here. Now I got a couple options. One of the options is I get another repair panel, namely for the inner cap corner. Maybe cut the inner cap corner around here and replace the entire bottom part. Or I can make my own patch panels. And that's what I'm going to do. This is the original size of the patch panel I bought to repair this cap corner. I cut this piece off because I only need this much to repair the outer cap corner. I will go ahead and use the remainder of this and cut off a few pieces to fill in the holes on the inner cap corner. Now the piece that I just cut with the big shears, I wire wheeled it to take the paint off, bent it in shape, and it will go right in here and fill this hole. I also cut another piece that will fit in this side, right in here. All right, time to weld in our first piece. It's currently being held in with a magnet from the back, and the first thing I'm going to do is spot weld through this. That did not go as planned at all. Let's call it good enough for a tack weld. That's better. I got this piece welded in and cleaned up, and this one here is tacked in right now. When welding sheet metal, you might know this, but maybe if you just start out, if you weld sheet metal, it's fairly thin, so it's easy to warp. So what you do is like, you make a tack here, one over there, one over there, one over there. And you don't try to run a bead down here or make lots of tacks next to each other, because what that's going to do is they're going to introduce a lot of heat into one spot, and two things will happen. First, the material will warp, which you really don't want. And what you even want less, you might burn through the thin sheet metal here. So again, just tack here, 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 and then you go around. Now let's get to it. This piece is welded in. Well, you get the idea. You can't really run a continuous bead around this, otherwise the metal will get too hot, it will warp, and you might burn through. So you keep making tacks like 1 or 2 inch distance around and around until eventually you have so many tacks that they form one closed bead. Not really a bead, it's a series of tacks, but you get the gist of this. I don't really care what this all looks like in here, because this is the inside cap corner, and this is going to be covered by our repair panel. No one's ever going to see this. I'll better be careful what I do on the outside here, because all of this is going to be visible on the outside. Now it's time to clean this up and do some rust prevention. There's multiple options you have here. There are some chemicals that will do a rust conversion, so they turn the iron oxide here into magnetite, which is black, and it does not oxidize anymore. The other way to do it, you can encapsulate whatever surface rust is left here with an epoxy primer. This is something I like to do, epoxy primers. It takes about 20 minutes to dry before you can keep working with the piece that you just encapsulated. So I'll degrease this with parts cleaner. Wipe it down with a clean rag. And shoot it with some dried compressed air. And here we go. I've been using epoxy primer for about a decade now, and there are some places where it's been exposed to the weather on a truck bed or on a door sill, and it's still holding up. I'm pretty confident that this will be okay for rust prevention. Now we let that tag up for 20 minutes before I continue with the outside cap corner. Here's my repair panel, and I'll line it up at the edge back here and the edge down there, and it's currently temporarily held in with a clevis pin here and with vice grips down here. As you can see, I already drilled the holes for spot welds back here. When joining two pieces of sheet metal, there are generally two choices. You can either overlap and spot weld, or you can do a butt weld, also called a butt joint. The overlap looks pretty much like this. You have a piece of sheet metal that is crimped up on one side, and you shove another piece of sheet metal underneath. You will drill holes in this and fill these holes with weld. Then, because these are two different pieces and this is not a waterproof joint, what you will have to do to keep the water out is to put some seam sealer across this, usually on the back side where it's flat. So on the entire back side, you'll apply seam sealer. The other chance you have is you'll take two pieces of sheet metal like this, and you will have to leave a small gap in between them. The gap is there, so the weld filler that you use has a chance to penetrate both sides here and will actually fill this in. And from the side, it'll look like this. You have two flat pieces of sheet metal with a little gap in between. If you weld this, what the weld will do is will penetrate this way, will penetrate this way, fill this in, and then barely protrude up top if you do it right. So you end up with a fairly flat surface on the top. If you were to take your two pieces of sheet metal and butt them up right next to each other, and then you try welding this, you will penetrate a little bit here, a little bit here, and most of your filler will sit on top like that, and you will have to grind this off afterwards. And if you do, only this little bit of weld here will keep these two pieces joined. This penetrate both sides, it's all the way filled, and this is a much stronger bond. This is what we want. And hence, we keep a small gap in between two pieces of sheet metal when we do a butt joint. I mocked this up like this repair panel slightly overlapping the original sheet metal, so that when I cut this now with an angle grinder, they will be the same shape and they will have a small gap in between them. little eager here, but that's okay. I can fill this in. Yep, that'll most likely do. Let me remove this clamp and the clevis pin. And now I have to clean up this edge up front here. I cleaned up these edges here with a wire wheel on the repair panel, so they have clean metal that I can weld to. Well, I put the panel back and held it in here with the clevis pin. And look at that. It actually fits in here with a little wiggle room to adjust and with a reasonable gap to weld. All right, time to weld our panel. First thing I want to do is try to line this edge up. The welding lens fell off the camera while I was doing this. I'll put it back up. Well, let's continue. Oh, I'm trying to line this edge up. Yeah, that looks like we can deal with this in bodywork. So I'll start filling this in. That's pretty on point. What usually happens when you weld, there's always going to be some distortion, but you can make it work for you. In the curve like this, I found that the weld usually just retracts a little bit to the inside of the panel. And that's nice because that gives you something to put your filler in. Lining up this edge now, in order to be able to fill it in. And it'd be nice if at least like these 2 inches here were good, because back there that's going to be covered by the bed. might need some more light. That's one filled spot weld. I clamp this to bring the material in. There. And then fill it. And there we go. I'm now drilling 3/16 hole in the bottom of our repair panel where it meets the rocker panel, so that I can spot weld this to the sheet metal behind it. One, two, three, that ought to be enough. Also on this side, where the patch panel attaches to the door frame, you need to drill some holes for spot welds. Okay, so this panel lines up pretty nicely here everywhere. I'm going to massage this in a little bit. They never fit 100%. You will have to make a couple adjustments. Oh yeah. Time to clean this up with a flap disc. Make sure that you only hit the weld and not so much the surrounding material. And usually you don't have to weld down your spot welds, but these ones are a little big. It's time to clean those welds up. Make sure that with your flap disc you only hit the weld and not so much the surrounding material. All you're trying to do is take away whatever protrudes from the weld past the surrounding material. And there I made a mistake. The reason why that discolored is because the metal wore thin. What's happening here, there's like a slide bowl on the outside here, because this panel kind of warped a little bit in and this a little bit out. And me getting overzealous trying to flattening this means material here got a little thin and then warmed up. I mean, it's still thick enough, it's structural, but this is really the last warning to you. When you see that, ooh, stop. So looking from the side here, looks pretty good. The rest is probably subject to filler. And this is good enough for me. This is good enough for my truck. Yes, it is. Good morning. Got a little late last night. After the cameras were off, I snuck in here and put a coat of high build primer on this. Then this morning, I gave it a quick sand and grabbed a cup of joe. Well, here we are. I am in no way a bodywork professional, but I reckon this is better than before. We got this line tied in, and the curve tied in, and that line works too. All right. I reckon this turned out a lot better than it had every right to be. What do you think?